Hello, Denise. Hello, everybody. We have a special podcast today in which we're going to talk about AI from another angle. We're all talking about AI all the time, but I thought today we can talk about it around what are regulators doing to support the industry with AI initiatives. And I thought that a perfect guest would be Denisse Rudich, who has taken part recently in FCA, the UK Regulators AI Lab, and she's got tentacles all over their various initiatives around AI. And there are many of them. I've been learning by talking to Denisse about all of that. So that's what Denisse and I are going to talk about. But first, I'm going to take a little bit of time to introduce Denisse because her background is so very varied that I'm going to have to look at my notes. So Denisse, you have served as head of AML and sanctions at RBS Corporate Bank. You've done financial crime head at Rabobank. You have worked as a project management lead for anti-corruption, TechSprint with the Inter-American Development Bank. You have your own company or several that have been doing lots of different things, including the Productopedia, which lists all the complex and other products in financial crime to support law enforcement and those who need that help in investigation teams. You have done a lot of lobbying work with, for example, IMF to link the Central African Republic with Bitcoin revocation. You've done work with Macron on issues of illicit finance. You've done work with G7 and 20. You've been at the, is it called Anti-Davos just earlier this year? So you, and I know that you actually take even part in some industry groupings that are not even public with US and regulators from lots of different countries. And because it's not public, we cannot list it all. But you're a trusted advisor and someone that many in our industry have known for a long time. Would you like to add anything to this long list?
Oh my goodness, Vesna, I'm blushing. Yes, no. So I mean, I've been working in this industry for 25 years, right? So in financial crime prevention. I wrote my master's thesis on anti-money laundering in 2002. So this was, at the beginning of the industry and the evolution of the Financial Action Task Force. I mean, I've worked in leadership roles inside of the regulated financial services, and I do love working with financial services firms, including fintech and DeFi and crypto, in addition to traditional financial services firms and regulators, really to help them understand, embrace technology, also financial intelligence units and, people in government, to embrace technology, to embrace innovation. So, and I know that the words, the two E's, to become more effective and more efficient, but really just to make things easier for themselves and easier to be able to disrupt criminal networks. And I do wear a few hats. I don't just take good selfies. Hopefully they're good selfies. Some of them are terrible selfies.
You're famous for your selfies on LinkedIn.
But it's all, I had no idea that was a thing until people kept on coming up to me. I was just like, oh my goodness. But it's all linked to fighting crime and dismantling organized crime.
Denisse, what made you get into financial crime? I always find it really interesting. No, I used to think that I got into it by kind of mistake. But then if I look backwards at my career, it sort of fits everything, including the astrology. How did you get? What inspired you?
So a lot of people don't know that I'm actually Mexican.
Canadian and Mexican, yes.
Latino. I am Mexican-Canadian. I was born in Mexico City. And so for me, kind of crime and corruption aren't like theoretical concepts. My family has lived through it. So I do have a cousin that when we were teenagers was actually shot, and they have a bullet that's still lodged in their head. They are fine, but it was a really difficult experience. And actually that was a symptom of organized crime and corruption as well in the country. Also, when I was very young, I was going to be a diplomat. I was going to make the world a better place in a different way, I guess. And then I saw grand scale corruption, kind of very high level, very senior level, very up close. And I realized that I didn't have the appetite for it. So I kind of shifted and actually went into forensics. So started doing kind of investigative and intelligence work, and then went into banking because I realized that at some point, anything that is financing, people are driven by greed or are sustained by money. So at some point, there will be a touch point into the global financial system, and really have devoted my life to disrupting organized crime and
That's
corruption.
something that's quite unforgettable
hybrid-
that, touched your family in that way. And I can really understand how for you that is real. I just came back from AML Intelligence, where we had also Elisa de Anda Madrazo, from the president of FATF, who is also Mexican. And you can hear, talking, and it's real for her too. But also when we hear about the industrialization of crime today with modern slavery, where apparently the numbers are the size of a country of the people that are trafficked today, and that the only industry in the world that's grown 20% is actually crime, financial crime and fraud, which has gone to 4.4 trillion US dollars, which is quite incredible. And it's a substantive number and percentage of the global GDP, and it represents a size of many countries. So when we talk about all of that, to zoom in, we in regulated institutions carry a lot of the burden of prevention and detection through the well-known requirements, along with the regulators. And of course, with the adoption of AI, it's been something that I know the FCA and regulators like MAS and US regulators, many others have really looked into in detail. I know that there have been sandboxes and labs, but I didn't really know how it was done. And I saw you graduating from the 10-week course last Friday, and congratulations on that. One of about 20 different institutions that have taken part, or maybe startups, ideas. But let's start with something. You have been involved with the FCA on these tech initiatives for a long time. Can you first tell us how long has it been going on?
So I was talking to Matt Lowe, and I have to give a shout out to Matt. He's the head of the AI Lab, and it's been a driving force between a lot of the initiatives at the Financial Conduct Authority, and Colin Payne and Simran. Their team is amazing. The first tech sprint ever held at the FCA was in 2018, and it was an anti-money laundering and and financial crime tech sprint. And so I joined as a participant and kind of, got bitten by the Innovation Hub, if that makes sense, met some incredible people that I'm actually still in touch with today, some of which have gone to build some pretty phenomenal, profitable, high-value tech companies. But what was amazing about it is just basically bringing together people from different backgrounds: academics, law enforcement, regulation, technologists, just coders, and seeing what was in the art of the possible. So I ended up becoming kind of a regular mentor in their tech sprints. I'm a mentor in their AI Sandbox. I deliver training to the FCA's board as well as senior management, and have actually advised them as well in terms of kind of on financial crime prevention and innovation on an ad hoc basis. So
That's a long time.
So I've been working with them since 2018.
So what kind of initiatives do they have in tech and AI specifically? Because I do find that a little bit unclear. Please do.
So, and this is where I'm going to have to look down at some of my notes, because they have very wonderful initiatives. So, I think it's important to remember that the FCA focuses on consumer protection, promoting competition, but also enhancing market integrity, right? Like financial crime prevention is one of their key pillars and one of their key thematic areas of focus. But they also have kind of an obligation to keep pace with innovation and how fast technology adoption is moving within the financial services industry. So they've adopted an approach. They call it anticipatory regulation, and it's based on being experimental, being collaborative and inclusive, and outcomes-based, and always looking forward. And so that actually opens a door to be able to engage with the regulator, not necessarily on an adversarial basis, which is how a lot of people think of when they think of a regulator. It's like, oh, don't say anything. They might know. You might be fined. Oh my gosh. But I always tell the FCA that I always think that when I deal with them, it feels like walking into a place where I'm going to get a warm hug. And I think I'm one of the few people that feels like that with the regulator. But they have a lot of different initiatives, not just on artificial intelligence. So they have policy and they have like a toolbox of different things that they do. So they have policy and tech sprints that are really there to help generate new ideas and shape, but also to feed into their future regulatory approach. So they see what's actually happening in the industry, and then that actually informs changes to regulation. They have the digital sandbox, which supports pilots have already been developed at prototypes. And basically what they do is they give access to high quality data sets to help different companies develop their ideas and test their ideas. Have some of our data in the sandbox, the AI sandbox. They have a regulatory sandbox where firms can actually test their products live in the market with real consumers, but in a very controlled environment. So it's a really amazing way of actually testing your product, even as they have big banks that are also doing this as well as kind of innovators doing this to test a new product that you want to bring to market, but you're worried that there might be consumer harm. So it's a way of doing this safely. They have an AI lab. So where you do sprints, they do spotlights on AI kind of innovative companies and financial services firms. They have an input zone where you can actually consult on any potential future regulation or approaches that they're thinking about taking on AI. They have their supercharged sandbox, which is again AI specific, and they partner with NVIDIA to provide a NVIDIA powered computer, so kind of faster processing chips. And they've powered with Naya One as well, which actually the former head of innovation at I can't remember, Australia. One of the Australian banks set that up as well. So it's pretty phenomenal. And then of course they launched their AI Lab Supercharged Academy, which was an invite only program. So they actually specifically picked certain participants. It was phenomenal. It was basically like a regulatory approved, I will say AI powered, because I now use AI in a very different way than I did like 3 months ago, mini MBA. So it was amazing. And then of course they kind of amplify and support, and they have a scale up unit. And they have innovation pathways where they actually give bespoke support to businesses to understand how FCA rules apply to regulatory gray areas. Again, all in the innovation space. So I think people are fully aware of this, these many, many services that are done by very, very few people. And it is actually quite phenomenal. So the FCA is, to me,
that's exactly why I wanted you and I to do this conversation, because while I think everybody is so busy running around, some people will know, but a lot of people will not be aware. So, I think what's interesting is that FCA will be therefore aware of a lot of initiatives and capabilities that AI does have. Do you know much about, and maybe you don't, how connected internally within the FCA is this team with someone like Beth, who we met at AMLP Forum a couple of weeks ago, the people who are meeting with the actual regulated entities?
So I do know, and I have seen when they have these showcases, when they have these kind of initiatives, they had a policy sprint. And actually there were a lot of different parts of the FCA that were there.
Sure.
But they have different objectives and they have different mandates, right? So, and I think when you think about resourcing, like in terms of maybe Beth is an expert on AI. We didn't speak about that, so I can't verify that. So the question is, you have a team that lives and breathes innovation.
Okay.
It does impact the FCA strategy. So they launched the Smart Data Initiative as well. They are doing an AML tech sprint at the moment, looking at how synthetic data can be used to train transaction monitoring and make transaction monitoring solutions much more effective. And also to train kind of different AI models as well using that kind of data. So you can see kind of how the innovation side of things feeds into the wider strategic framework. But of course, it's how much time do people who are going and visiting different sites and doing audits and reviews and reading files and interviewing people, how strong are they AI experts? How many AI experts are there really in the world? Everybody's using AI, but in terms of actually being able to call themselves experts is
we don't all need to be experts.
It's a question that should be asked.
Nor do we need to be experts to use it, nor to be regulators. I think it's just a matter of it's good to know that they are sharing that information internally. And before we go into the detail of what the program consisted of, which I think is interesting in this case, can you tell me a little bit about the cooperation? You mentioned NVIDIA, but FCA is not doing this in isolation. They're doing it with different companies who are providing background in terms of, tools like NVIDIA, which is quite impressive, as well as other regulators and so on. Can you give us a little bit of color on that?
So, I mean, what I found really amazing about the FCA is that they actually, they did go out and they did seek out kind of a partnership with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is providing some resources. So it's a way of providing capital, private sector capital to support.
That's not important.
I can't really talk about exactly the status of it. They work with, what is amazing is they open the possibility for data providers and other technology firms to be able to support the sandbox, right? So it's a way of kind of building out the ecosystem. So it's kind of like a marketplace where you're able to actually provide, plug in your API, and then individual companies that are part of the sandbox or the AI live testing environment, or even with the tech sprints, can actually use your data to try it out. I guess it's like a play to pay kind of environment perhaps, but it's also about relationship building, right? And kind of building trust within the innovation ecosystem and service. That doesn't mean that you're going to, be able to sell into a bank, but at least it just creates awareness for RegTech, of what RegTech solutions are out there, not necessarily that they're forced by the FCA, but just that, what they are building or their data is good enough to
I saw MAS
be part
there,
of these
the
different
Monetary Authority of Singapore.
initiatives.
So that's one regulator they work with. Have you seen any others over the years?
Yeah. So I think GFIN, gosh, what does GFIN stand for? So they're definitely part of a kind of a wider supervisory group of different supervisors that they bring together, and they kind of share best practice and learnings between themselves. But what's really interesting about the Monetary Authority of Singapore is that they actually signed an AI partnership and let me read this as well, to champion safe and responsible AI innovation across the UK and Singapore. So it's all about sharing best practices as well. Last year, MAS actually published I think it's how to AI governance risk paper that's kind of still undergoing consultation. But again, AI is used everywhere all over the world. You have different models, but it's kind of like a different flavor of the same thing. One of my biggest kind of takeaways was from this course was, probably everybody already knew this. For me, it was an aha moment. Everybody thinks that AI is like magic, because it does feel like magic, right? You have your little robots that are helping you out and answering questions for you and cutting through a lot of the kind of the gray areas to save you time, and amazing at helping you scaffold different things. But actually, at the end of the day, AI is the statistical representation of human language. It's a mathematical concept, like a mathematical-based concept. So really, there shouldn't be that many differences in terms of how AI regulation is rolled out around the world. So these kinds of partnerships are amazing, because you've got two of the world's leading financial services centers learning from each other, cooperating, but also promoting. They brought over a group of companies that have used AI to build out solutions from Singapore. And I imagine that the same is going to happen, in terms of taking British companies out there. So from a growth perspective and competition perspective, I think it's also fantastic. And I mean, the Monetary of Singapore, I think you and I talked about how they've built out their KYC, they were trying to build out their KYC utility. It was very expensive. So they ended up putting that to the side and then focused on digital identity and eKYC. And they also have a RegTech grant, which boy, do I wish that something like that was available in the UK. And it's a way for financial services firms to bring in regulatory technology at a lower risk and a lower cost to themselves. And they basically made this available. I think it was 150 million that was available for anti-money laundering type of solutions. So KYC, onboarding, transaction monitoring, detecting suspicious activities, regulatory reporting, case management, and orchestration. So that I would love for the British government and regulators around the world, actually, because it is very
It is very
difficult
difficult because
to
I
incubate
do
these
think,
solutions.
I mean, I worked inside institutions for a very long time, and I realize now, having been outside, and the first 4 or 5 years of my independent work, I worked a lot with what we used to call reg techs back about 10 years ago. And I realized how difficult it is for them to understand how banks work inside. A lot of these people have great ideas, but they read about KYC in newspaper. So they don't necessarily understand, but they have good IT understanding, good ideas. And so we often don't see their side of the coin, and to have them succeed to provide good solutions for us, we probably need to give them a little bit of slack in terms of the timelines and how quickly we get to conclusions on proofs of concept and proofs of value and expectations of it always being for free, and the processes lasting for 18, 24 months to get it ready. You know, it exhausts probably private capital, these people's mortgages and so on. That's very tricky. So any kind of help from regulators is very positive in that way, because innovation is what pushes us forward. You know, that's what cancer cure comes from innovation. All the big important things, solutions to waste, to climate, come from innovation rather than saying, no, we won't do something. So in that sense, you were inside that program in a couple of roles. So can you give us a sense of what you did for the FCA in this?
Yeah. So I was there actually as a member of the cohort. So I work with the AI Lab as a mentor, helping other companies kind of figure out how to bring their product to market, give them insights into actually, because like you, I worked inside a bank for many years, also sourcing technology and setting up anti-money laundering frameworks, and kind of helping them understand what is useful, what might be needs to change, how to drive different things forward, how to position themselves as well, and how to understand the market and the challenges in the market. So that was kind of like with my mentor hat. But we were also participants in the cohort. A few years ago, we decided to build out Productopedia, which is basically a platform that has information on financial products that can support a whole bunch of different functions. So it's a financial crime and product risk intelligence tool, and we are using AI. So it is AI enabled. I don't want to say AI powered. And what does that mean? That means that we use AI in different ways to make sure that the data is clean, to make sure that the data is accessible and understandable. But our data comes from humans. So we have a list of over 110 different products and financial services, the risk indicators, fund flow diagrams, but also a list of controls so that you can understand where the vulnerabilities are in a complex financial product, and then how to mitigate those vulnerabilities and how to stop, dirty money from moving through those products.
And so when you
we
were
identify
doing
and
that,
provide information on where the
that
product
was the
risk is and how
10-week
to stop it.
MBA, mini MBA that you said. So what kind of stuff did you have to do briefly?
Oh gosh, it was there was a lot. So we had to kind of identify our ideal user, UIP. I forgot what it actually stands for. We had to build out our financial models. We had to build out our go-to-market strategy. We had to understand how to actually do a risk assessment for artificial intelligence, and how to build out our AI governance frameworks. How do you draft an AI responsible AI statement? How do you actually sell or bring a product that a bank is actually able to use, right? Because at the end of the day, the bank retains corporate liability on something going wrong. So if you're bringing technology into a bank, you need to make sure that there's documentation. For AI, it's got to be auditable, explainable, and there's got to be transparency around the model that you're using, but also around the risks, who owns the risks, who's accountable for the risks, not just who owns the risk, but who would, when something goes wrong, whose name ends up in the news or on the fine, right? Which is where we think about these things. Yeah, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And then we also had to come up with it just created a wider understanding of how artificial intelligence also fits in within a wider regulatory framework, right? So if you're thinking about consumer protection, you've got to be aware of bias. If you're thinking about GDPR, you have to think about, do I build a privacy by design solution that does not, talk to link to any public identifiable data, or PII, personal identifier. I forgot what that actually stands for. Consumer protection, marketing, things like that. So we actually had to do an analysis of the various solutions, the role of AI in your solution, and how that maps against the various themes.
That really sounds amazing.
And mandates within the regulatory
congratulations
framework.
on being
the
valedictorian student there, who actually gave the speech at the end of the ceremony. So I'm very impressed with you for doing that. So in terms of the Productopedia, you told us a little bit about what it does. What other products were there that FCA do they pick areas, or do people just apply? And how does that work? Okay.
So that I don't exactly understand, because you had people who were building legal agents to be able to support with understanding, basically to cut out the lawyer, but not make decisions on behalf of the lawyer. So to be able to advise clients that are facing legal issues, specifically in the area of financial crime. And we had somebody who was actually providing this as a service and building these agents out for Mexico specifically, which has a different regulatory environment and similar yet local flavored of anti-money laundering laws. There was somebody who was building out AI kind of tooling to be able to identify the difference in semantics. So be able to identify whether people's voices or kind of, identify emotions.
It was the customer protection
when
stuff.
you
There
are
were
listening to somebody on the phone, which again from
those that were doing
consumer
financial advice,
protection,
maybe even 3 or 4 of them. So there's investment advice, financial advice, a lot of that. A lot of it, from what I saw, was about supporting the function, whatever the function is. Support the lawyer to crunch through the laws, but then still have somebody at the end give it a human view. Or support financial advisors with observing what their clients need, give them reminders, provide review of their positions on an ongoing basis, tag them to anyway. But there were also several financial crime solutions. There were some KYC ones from Singapore, and there were some FCA ones on this side, and your Productopedia. So it was actually, financial crime was quite well represented, considering.
And reporting as well.
We didn't see a lot of other tools. Is that how it's been over the years?
So, I think definitely one of the key thematic areas for the FCA is financial crime prevention. That's one of their, to protect, it links into their financial integrity, consumer protection, and competition strategy. They have had quite a few tech sprints on financial crime prevention, fraud, advanced payment fraud. They had 2 tech sprints for specifically on anti-money laundering, financial crime prevention, wider fraud one, crime and crypto. I can't remember what they have had quite a few. And again, they're having their transaction monitoring one right now with synthetic data, and they're doing another one with iOSCO that touches upon financial crime. And I think this is the thing, the industry, the anti-money laundering industry and the anti-money laundering tech industry is massive, right? So I think the statistic, it was the 2024 or 2023 data says that it's a $206 billion industry. And it's growing on an annual basis. And so we do, and with the amount of data that is being generated across the world, and criminals using AI themselves to perpetrate crimes and to create synthetic identities, which is kind of emerging as one of the biggest deepfakes, and so that's fake voice and synthetic identities are effectively creating many, many challenges to onboarding processes. So how do you find by a robot? You have to do the same. And given the amount of data, I like to think that I'm pretty good at what I do, but I'm not IBM's Watson.
So, well, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground here, and it's really good and interesting to know that the FCA is investing so much into not just generally technology, but AI specifically. And within AI, labs and other initiatives that financial crime features quite heavily. And it's not a surprise when you think about the rise of fraud and financial crime across the globe. In closing, can you tell me, where do you see the regulators going with all of this? What are they going to focus on? What do you think the firms who are implementing AI should be thinking about? I think a lot of firms are already doing it and they're quite knowledgeable, but we all know that the speed of this is very significant. So what would your advice be as a participant and somebody who works closely with the FCA and innovation?
So I would say definitely. So I think that there's definitely consultations taking place, right? So they are working on, I don't know whether they're going to issue regulations specifically, just like you said, the pace of change. Legislation, if you put in legislation around AI at the moment, by the time like a year happens, once the piece of legislation has gone through, there will be new things that need to be changed.
I think you mentioned the governance. I actually had a few people talk to me about AI, and they're saying the governance is more of an issue for them.
Yeah. So it's understanding where does AI touch your processes, right? And being able to explain that to the regulator, who is responsible, who interacts with it. So kind of like with GDPR, you had to do your data risk map for personally identifiable information. Thank you, PII. You probably have to do the same with artificial intelligence, right? And then ultimately, what is your firm's appetite for bringing in, a lot of people are talking about kind of developing AI native operating models, which effectively means using AI agents as part of your day-to-day workflow in your business. At the moment, a lot of people are using ChatGPT, so generative AI, or Copilot, within Microsoft that integrates with your files and whatnot. But what does that mean? Because if you are dealing with sensitive data, and I think it's important to remember that whatever you put into any public model trains that public model and makes that data publicly accessible as well. And you don't know where it's going to end up because of the risks of using AI. So there's hallucinations, adversarial attacks. I think it's called model drift, latency. So anytime there's new data that's put into an AI model, the output is going to be very different. So the point of testing is to make sure that the changes are as few and far between as possible. And then I think, it's governance, risk assessment. Who's responsible? What are the risks? How do you mitigate it? What is your responsible AI statement? What are you comfortable having your employees using, and making it clear what the do's and don'ts are not with regards to AI, and what data is there or not.
I really think that that's going to have more and more value. I think that human interaction is going to have more and more value in the future. Those institutions that use AI wisely and use it to serve the people, both in terms of their employees and their customers. We need to remember that AI is here to serve our need. So there isn't, I do not see this place which some people talk about. Oh, they're going to replace everything, entire processes, and they're going to train each other, and they're going to invent the new ways and so on. But I think what we're forgetting is that AI is just a set of decisions, or yes or no, 0, 1, 0, 1. That's all it is. And it's only has yes, no gray. It may look that way to us when we're not paying attention, but very quickly, when you talk to your ChatGPT, it strays into something that, doesn't actually make a lot of sense and isn't a human being. So, we need human desire, as we call it. We need our need to be number one. And that's what we test these things against. And for that, we're going to need experience in financial crime. And, we're going to have to keep training juniors to come up through the ranks, because we will have to be in the position in the future where there is somebody who can still train those tools to our need. And of course, I think AI is going to be replaced at some point by quantum computing and plasma computing and all sorts that we're hearing in the very cutting edge right now. So a lot to look forward to. But I think what you describe and that framework is going to be really important.
And the human in the loop, right? Like, a robot should not be taking decisions that have a material impact on humans, on human lives, whether it's access to banking facilities, whether it's deployment of new products, whether it's whether
Suspicious
somebody should
activity,
be
yeah.
reported or not for perceived wrongdoing. Yeah, suspicious activity reporting. So you have to kind of make sure that there is some sort of oversight. It can definitely help with making things much more efficient, right? It can support with kind of filling out information. It could support with getting additional data. But at the end of the day, the analysis needs to be something that can hand up to human scrutiny. And I think the way that, again, this course changed the way that I think about technology and AI and how I work with it now. And it's just making sure that it's a way of supercharging humans, right? It's a way of making you more efficient. And like you said, with the training and, it's redeployment of skills versus kind of replacing of humans, because we're always going to, ultimately, we need to be accountable for the decisions that are made. We are offering financial services. We are offering products that affect human lives, and an algorithm doesn't understand how that feels, right? So kind of thinking about the feeling and semantic. So in terms of the last thing of what's next, something that in terms of not a good trend, there have been kind of stories about hybrid threats emerging where AI models are being trained, like where bad data is being fed at scale into models to kind of train them to make not good decisions. So I think that's, again, when your agent or your model or whatever model you're using, and again, some of these are public models as well, just again, make sure that you're questioning everything, not necessarily just taking everything for granted. We're working with Google. It's just faster, right? So with a voice that sounds like it has authority. And check the sources as opposed to just reading things, taking things at face value. But I also do really enjoy using different AI tools, and it has been from cost cutting, from cost cutting basis. I mean, I laugh during some of my interactions with ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT is funnier than Claude. Sorry, Claude.
Yeah, don't offend them, please. I did read
both.
that there have been instances. I don't remember the detail, but there was an article about somebody who tracks that there is apparently even a website, an online community for agents, for chat, for AI agents. And they talk to one another, especially about how to circumvent controls, human controls. And this is where this one agent was corrected, and then somebody tried to close it down, and he was complaining publicly about this person. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty grim, actually. And I don't imagine it's going to happen every day. But it's probably quite unpleasant. And, we do have to not forget that however fantastic and helpful, it's like a knife, it's a tool. And you can kill people with a knife, or you can cook beautiful food that nourishes human beings. Well, Denisse, it's been really wonderful to talk to you about all of this. I will definitely be following your future work with the FCA from here on. Thanks again for your time and for all the very, very interesting about what regulators are doing today about AI.
Thank you for having me. As always, a joy chatting with you.